Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really opening the hood on something fundamental, your internal operating system, your values, beliefs, motivation. We want to see how we can maybe perform a serious upgrade. We're diving deep into neurolinguistic programming, NLP, specifically looking at the structures that govern real personal change. Our mission, to pull out practical, step-by-step ways to understand, identify, and, well, ultimately shift your own internal system of values and beliefs.
Yeah.
If you've ever felt stuck, maybe caught in some kind of internal conflict or just procrastinating like crazy even when you want a goal, this deep dive is really for you. It's about resolving those blocks.
Absolutely. And this isn't about quick fixes, is it? We're talking about achieving real congruence. This deep dive offers you, let's say, a path to aligning what you think you want with how you actually unconsciously act. We're aiming to work at the deepest levels of consciousness here, ensuring you're not just motivated, but truly aligned for a more fulfilling life.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The first big step, the foundation, really. Before you change anything, you need to know what you're actually trying to achieve, what you value. So identifying values, and this is key, setting up a hierarchy so they aren't secretly tripping you up. The process itself starts pretty simply. Define the context. You pick an area, career, health, relationships, maybe something that's causing issues right now. Once you've got that focus, you start extracting the values, just asking again and again, what is important to you in this specific context? The sources say aim for a good list, maybe 10 to 20 values initially.
Yeah, and you want to cast a wide net at first. If your context is career, you might list things like, I don't know, success, creativity, maybe financial security, helping people, independence. But just having a list, well, that doesn't tell you what's really driving your decisions day to day. That's where the hierarchy part comes in. You absolutely have to create a precise, ordered priority list. And you do that by asking the tough questions. Okay, what's more important to you, value X or value Y? It can feel a bit uncomfortable, sure, but without ranking them, when a conflict comes up later, your brain just freezes.
Right. I can almost hear people thinking, hang on, 20 values, ranking them all against each other. That sounds like a huge task. And how do we even know if we're ranking, real core values or just the things we need to do to get those values, the means versus the ends?
That's a great point, and it leads straight into the alignment check. This uses the idea of logical levels of abstraction. It's absolutely vital for sorting out what's a means, a tool, versus an ultimate end, the actual destination.
Okay, so give me an example. If I value financial security and I also value independence, how does that check work?
Okay, so you test the link. You ask yourself, if I achieved financial security, what would that get me? What would it enable me to do or feel? If the answer is something like, well, that would let me feel independent, then boom, independence is the higher level value here. Financial security, while definitely important, is more like the vehicle, the means to reach that higher end. And if your hierarchy is built mostly on means, you might achieve them and still feel, well, unfulfilled, because you haven't hit the real target.
Wow, okay. That distinction alone is incredibly clarifying, isn't it? So once we've nailed down the real underlying values, the ends, we need to make sure they're framed correctly. Syntactic alignment, you called it?
Exactly. Every single value needs to be phrased positively and always as an approach, something you move towards. You want health, not avoiding sickness. You want connection, not avoiding being alone. See, if your value is framed as an avoidance, your unconscious mind basically spends its energy scanning for threats, not looking for opportunities. It's inherently restrictive.
Makes sense. And just quickly before we move on, the sources mentioned submodalities, an optional step.
Right, optional but potentially powerful. A submodality is just about the fine-tuning of your internal experience. Like, is the image of success in your mind bright or dim, close or far away? Does it have a sound? The technique involves taking the internal picture or feeling of your highest positively framed values and consciously or unconsciously amplifying the positive bits. Make the image brighter, maybe bigger, bring it closer, link it to a really strong positive feeling. It basically boosts the go-getter signal in your nervous system for that value. Yeah.
All right, so we know what we value. We've got our hierarchy. Now let's look at the engine. What actually drives us to go after those values? This is technique 2. Diagnosing the direction of motivation. Why do we do what we do? Are we running towards something good or running away from something bad? The diagnosis itself sounds incredibly simple, but the implications seem huge. You just ask yourself, why is this specific value important to me?
Exactly. And the answer tells you everything. If the response focuses on achieving something positive, like to achieve freedom or to experience deep connection, that's approach motivation. Moving towards something. This tends to be proactive, self-starting. sustainable. Because the closer you get to the goal, the more motivated you feel. But if the answer is more about prevention, managing threats, so I don't lose my job or so people don't think I'm weak, that's avoidance motivation, moving away from something. And here's the kicker. This away from direction often leads to getting stuck. Why? Because once the immediate danger is gone or feels less intense, the motivation just evaporates. You only do just enough to keep the bad thing at bay. It leads to that chronic procrastination feeling, always reacting instead of creating.
That totally explains the last-minute deadline panic. You're running away from the shame of failure, not toward the satisfaction of finishing. So the goal then is to shift that negative reactive avoidance motivation into a positive, proactive approach one. The sources mention using changed personal history for motivation rooted in past negative experiences, maybe even trauma. That sounds, well, intense. How does someone even start with that? Isn't that stuff often buried deep?
It often is unconscious, absolutely. The sources really stress that these strong avoidance patterns are nearly always linked to some past negative event, an event that basically taught the younger you, danger, avoid this situation. So, changing personal history involves finding that original sensitizing event, understanding the meaning you gave it back then, and then, crucially, using your adult perspective and resources to kind of neutralize the intense negative emotion tied to it. You're not erasing history, you're just discharging the emotional power it holds over your choices now. Once that charge is gone, the avoidance compulsion often just dissolves. The other big intervention tool mentioned is separating components. This tackles that common problem where a positive goal gets tangled up with a negative consequence or label. Like you want financial abundance, positive value, but you're strongly avoiding being seen as greedy, negative association.
Got it. So the positive desire is tied to a negative fear, like an internal handbrake.
Precisely. The technique helps you consciously pull those apart. You recognize, okay, having resources, comfort, security that can be separate from the negative idea of greed or materialism. By separating those two concepts in your mind, the unconscious stops sabotaging your efforts towards the positive goal because it no longer sees them as inherently linked. And look, if we tie all this together, a huge amount of that internal friction we feel, procrastination, indecision, that low-level anxiety, it often doesn't come from lacking motivation. It comes from having values that are actively fighting each other. This is technique 3, actually resolving these value conflicts.
Right. The internal civil war that just leaves you feeling paralyzed. The first type sounds like the easiest to spot. Approach versus approach. Towards stress.
Yeah.
You want two positive things, but they seem mutually exclusive in practice. Like, pouring everything into your career needs 80 hours a week, but being a fully present parent means being home by 5 p.m. sharp. They clash.
Yeah, that's a classic one. The solutions here are pretty direct, but they do require you to be honest with yourself. First, you might need to revisit your values hierarchy. Which one is genuinely more important right now at this life stage? You have to choose. Or, if they feel truly equal in importance, the second solution is something called parts integration.
Okay, hang on. Parts. What does that mean in this context? I need to unpack that a bit.
Sure, think of a part as simply representing an internal viewpoint or energy that's dedicated to a specific value. So you have a career part wanting success and a family part wanting connection. They're both you, just focused differently. Integration means finding a higher level goal, a meta value that actually serves both of those parts. So maybe the meta value becomes integrated fulfillment, and then you have to redefine career success. So it includes providing the resources and flexibility needed for family connection. You're merging the competing drives into one unified direction.
That's a really powerful reframe. Okay, second conflict type. This sounds like the really draining one. Avoidance versus avoidance. Away. Classic rock in a hard place. Stuck between two things you don't want. Like maybe avoiding the instability of unemployment versus avoiding the soul-crushing boredom of your current stable job. Both feel bad.
Exactly. And this creates enormous stress because you're just trapped, constantly reacting to perceived threats from both sides. The most effective fix here is usually transformation. You have to take at least one of those away froms and actively shift its motivation into a positive towards. So you move from the defensive, I don't want to be unemployed, to the proactive, I want fulfilling work that provides financial security. As soon as one path becomes about moving towards something desirable, the whole dynamic changes. You're not just running from danger anymore, you have a positive direction.
Makes sense. And the third common conflict, approach versus avoidance. A positive goal tied up with a fear or a negative belief, like I want to start my own business approach, but I'm terrified of failing and losing everything, avoidance, or I really want a deep relationship, but I'm scared of getting hurt again.
Right. And in this structure, the avoidance almost always wins in the long run. If that fear of getting hurt is strong enough, you'll unconsciously sabotage any chance of real intimacy. So the fear, the avoidance part, must be dealt with first. That usually means, again, releasing the negative emotion tied to whatever past event created that fear, and then, crucially, changing the limiting belief that connects the two, like challenging the belief that intimacy always leads to pain, or taking a financial risk inevitably leads to ruin. You have to break that linkage.
Okay, so if values are our priorities and motivation is the engine, then beliefs are like the internal rule book. They dictate what we think is possible, what's allowed, what's not. So if we want really deep, lasting change, we have to look at the wiring itself. Technique 4. Changing limiting beliefs. The research seems to lay out 5 key steps for doing this effectively. Step 1. Create negative motivation. Really feel the current pain, the consequences of keeping that old limiting belief. Get leverage on yourself.
Then step 2 follows right on its heels. Create positive motivation. You vividly imagine the future, the new outcomes, the possibilities that open up once that belief is gone. Give your mind a compelling reason to change.
Step 3 sounds crucial. Create doubt in the old belief. You don't just argue with it, you actively challenge its foundations. Ask things like, is this belief always true 100% of the time? Where did I even learn this? What's the cost if I keep believing this forever? You poke holes in it.
Once you've shaken its certainty, you move to step 4. Establish a new, empowering belief. And you phrase it positively. In the present tense, I am capable, success is possible for me. And then maybe the most important step, step 5, is action. You have to go out and take real-world steps, even small ones, that confirm and solidify the new belief. Your brain needs proof.
Right. Real-world evidence to overwrite the old program. But what's really fascinating here is the idea that even changing specific beliefs might not stick if we don't address the really deep ones, the core beliefs.
Exactly. These are the big ones, the identity-level assumptions. Things like, I am unworthy, or I'm fundamentally flawed, or I'm not capable. They aren't just rules about specific situations, like I'm bad at math. They're perceived truths about who you are.
And these usually get formed way back in childhood, right?
Yeah.
Through powerful experiences with parents, maybe peers, or even trauma. We experience something intense and make a huge generalization about ourselves based on it.
That's typically how it happens, yes. So working with a core belief, it requires a deeper dive. You need to explore the original cause, the event, or situation that birthed it. Then trace the resulting life consequences. How has this belief shaped your choices and experiences? And finally, uncover the meaning or sometimes the hidden positive intention the belief serves. It sounds strange, but sometimes a belief like I'm unworthy might unconsciously serve to protect you. If I believe I'm unworthy, I won't aim high, so I can't fail spectacularly. You have to address that underlying function to truly shift the core identity piece.
That's deep work. And finally, just to make sure all this effort integrates properly, there's a final check. Developing an outcome with logical levels.
Yeah, think of it as the ultimate congruence test. You take your new goal, your desired change, and you check it against all the levels. Is it aligned with your environment, your planned behaviors, your skills and capabilities, your newly clarified values, and fundamentally your core identity? If the change feels right and fits smoothly at every single one of those levels, then you've achieved that state of full internal alignment we were aiming for right from the start. #tag summary and takeaways.
Wow. This has really been a proper deep dive into the architecture of how we change from the inside out. For you listening, the benefits here are pretty clear, I think. These techniques offer real clarity on what you truly value at the deepest level. They give you tools to finally resolve that awful feeling of being stuck or procrastinating by sorting out those internal wars.
Yeah.
And maybe most importantly, they help shift your whole drive from just reacting to fear to actively striving towards the positive things you want in life.
Yeah, the end goal is that state of deep congruence.